Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My name is Aldo Mazza, percussionist, drummer, and artistic director of Kosa Music, inviting you to listen in conversation with friends, artists, professionals, and experts in our music world. And don't forget to subscribe so you may receive notices on the new and latest podcasts and episodes. Today, I have the great opportunity of having my great friend from across the world, and I mean the globe, in Australia, Mr. Frank Corniola. Thank you so much, Frank, for joining me on this conversation.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, Aldo, and it's an absolute pleasure and an honor to finally connect with you. We go back a long way, and this is fantastic. And I'm in Sydney at the moment, in my home studio, and it's just a wonderful day here today, and it's only 10 a.m. in the morning. I know it's around 6 p.m. We're in the future, so I can actually give you the lotto numbers.
After we finish, I'm going to call you on that one because I never buy lottery tickets, and people find me strange why I do that, just for the fear of winning. Because then what? Then likewise. All of this work, then it's not the same. That's another subject. But
absolutely,
before we talk about shaping your journey, please just give us what that original spark was for you in the very beginning. How did you get on this road, on this track, and what you're doing from the beginning, the spark?
Okay, from the very beginning, I was actually born in Calabria, Italy, and my family, from my father's side, the Corniola family, were very musical. So my grandfather actually played the spoons, and his grandchildren played, and his children played piano accordion, and one of my cousins played drums, older cousin. And I can remember when I was about 4 or 5, I was just so inspired. Every time we went to my father's side of the family on a Sunday, that music was it brought everything together and alive, and it was just so happy. And and my father played a little bit of guitar. So that's kind of how it all started. And I just remember this cousin of mine had a red drum kit, and I was just so drawn to that. And I was just, from the word go, I thought, I got to play drums. And he used to let me play and just bash around a little bit as a 5, 6-year-old. But that's where really the passion began for me. And it was wonderful. And then a few years later, when I was 7, almost 8 years of age, my parents migrated to Australia. So, obviously did all my schooling here, and there was very little music at school. But in my family, we carried on with the music. So my older brother played guitar and sang. My father, as I said, played a little bit of guitar, but not professionally or anything like that. But the spark of music was just alive in our family, and that's kind of really where it all began. And then, as I got into it, found a teacher, which was really difficult in those days to actually find anyone to actually teach drums, because we were new and we had no idea where to go. Right. And of course, the most obvious place was to go to the local music shop. So I did that, and that's kind of where I met people and enrolled for lessons with a wonderful teacher. His name was Harold Ripper, and I was about 12 years of age by that stage. And I could speak English by then too, because you can imagine coming to a new country, they just used to place you in a classroom and say, we got Frank from Italy. Can anyone speak Italian? A few hands went up and they just set you with them. Okay, you're going to be the translator. And they just throw you in the class, and that was it. So you had to sort of, swim as they go. And a few years later, obviously picked up the language and started doing very well. And then the music kind of started evolving into my life. And, and really I've never looked back. And it was just, I always knew that's what I wanted to do. And by the time I was 14, I was already doing professional gigs in weddings and clubs and stuff with my older brother. He got me into the band, which was fantastic. And the journey began from there on.
And did you do any formal studies during this time, apart from the lessons? Was there university at the time?
No, I didn't. I took lessons from wonderful teachers around in Australia. In those days, music, if to do a music degree at a college or university, it had to be more classical orientated. And with drums was just really completely overlooked. It wasn't until years later where they made drums part of a university course where you can do a music degree and major on drums. But in the 70s, it didn't exist. If I took up, obviously classical percussion, there was a road obviously into that, but I had no idea. So I just didn't even pursue that. But I did a lot of study, and of course I bought tons of books. Every time there was a new book out, I would be, right there and purchasing that. And then eventually when videos came out, it was incredible, in the 80s. The very first one, as we all know, Up Close with Steve Gadd, that was just mind-blowing, and the rest is kind of history. But
yes.
It was just incredible. So the videos were a great way for me to actually learn, where now we've got all the incredible online lessons, but in the late 70s, 80s, none of that existed, as we know, and the videos were a fantastic way. But we had wonderful teachers here in Australia, like Graham Morgan. He's still, God bless him, he's 86 years of age, and he's still teaching. Wow. He's incredible. He's an absolute legend. And he studied with people like Joe Morello. When I say studied, Joe Morello, Louis Balsam, Buddy Rich were his buddies. He lived in the US for a few years and came back in the early 60s. He actually lived in the US for 2 years and, got to learn a lot as a young guy himself. And, it was wonderful. He brought back all that knowledge and really, he was an educator as well as a great performer. He played on all the TV shows, and he was in the Channel 9 big band for 20-odd years. And so we had a lot of wonderful drummers, and guys like Graham Morgan taught Virgil Donati, for example, when he was an 8, 9, 10-year-old. And so we've been fortunate that drumming in Australia has been at the forefront for many, many years.
Right.
So no formal university degrees, but a hell of a lot of study and life practical work, as we all, know that sometimes that's the actual master teacher and master degree right there.
Absolutely. And it's funny, Frank, because I was also born in Calabria. I was 9 years old when we immigrated to Canada.
Wow.
Okay. Not speaking
we could
English.
Be neighbours, because my parents actually were tossing up between Australia and Canada.
That's right. It's colder here, trust me. And when I grew up, my father originally wanted to go to New York because half our family's in New York. And there's the quota of people from other countries at the time, so he had to kind of bide his time. But he went to Ottawa, where an aunt sponsored him. I was 9 years old when we came. So by the time I came, his permission, or his, not green card, but the permission to come into the country had come in. But then he heard that through all the family that, remember, your kids will have to do military service. At the time in the U.S., it was obligatory, right? So then my father just sent the papers back, says, no, I'm not coming there.
Good choice.
After all of this sacrifice, we're staying here. And that's interesting. And now we actually bought a house in Calabria, so we're kind of putting one foot over there. We're citizens, so we can go back and forth, and we're through the COSA stuff that we've been doing all over the world. Now we're going back and actually reestablishing my kind of roots, but through COSA and the workshops that we've done.
Oh, it's all wonderful, man. It's great work. You're doing amazing work. Absolutely fantastic. Calabria will definitely embrace all that, and especially with, it's part of your origin, and it's a wonderful place, as you know. And well done for doing that. Isn't it incredible how parents left and now, we're going back. And I've been back dozens of times, and I've still got a lot of family there.
Yeah.
And I've got quite a few cousins in Toronto as well. So, I've been to Canada, probably about 10 years ago or so now. Lovely, wonderful place. And but there's a special place in my heart for Calabria, or Italy and Europe in general. It's just It's an incredible place. In fact, the first time I went back after we left, I was 20 years of age, and I was just so blown away with what we left. And obviously our parents left that for to give us a better life and more opportunities, because in the south of Italy there was very little work. And my father worked actually in Germany. He was steel fabrication, welding, engineering, and he had to work. He had to leave home for 3 months at a time because there was zero work in Calabria. That was hence why they made the decision to migrate to Australia. But it was. I mean, I'm sure that there's millions of those similar stories, as obviously with you as well. So it's incredible.
my father was working in Switzerland, so he would go back and forth
Well, there you go.
In the German side of Switzerland, and he left some family there too. So we plant everybody's seed. I mean, we're helpful everywhere we go, right, Frank?
Absolutely, it's wonderful, and we've got a very similar story, Aldo, because I've got two of my uncles from my mother's side went to Switzerland, and I've still got cousins, and obviously they've been there. They said, "Oh, we'll just go over there to just make some money, and we'll be back in a couple of years." Of course, they got married there, then they had children there, and the rest is history. You know, they're still there. So it's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
It's, as I said, there's many of those similar stories. But we were fortunate to come to Australia, and fortunate that we had the opportunities here, because if you had the work ethic and the get up and go, you had opportunities here. Not that they don't have opportunities there, but in those days, in the 60s and 70s, it was a hell of a lot tougher. Now, when we go back, we see, wow, they're all doing well, and it's amazing. It's changed a lot now. But in those early days, it was very, very tough for family, and life in general was wonderful, but the work security, it was just a day here and a day there. And, I'm one of five. So,
wow.
It was a big decision. My father was 40 years of age when he migrated. My mum was 33, I think. So, I often think, what a gutsy move. I don't know whether I could do that with five. Well, it was actually 4 children and my youngest brother. My mum was actually expecting my youngest brother. He was born in Australia 6 months later. So she was expecting my youngest brother. So for a man to go, okay, we're going to relocate to the other side of the world with 4 children, and my mum was expecting, it's like, I sometimes think, you reflect on that, you go, wow, that's so inspirational.
Yeah. And, I don't believe in coincidences. So sometimes things happen. I mean, obviously it wasn't done on the instant. Many people had to do what they had to do to make it work. And there was these lifelines. And for my family, we had, as I said, a couple of uncles in New York, on the other side, everywhere, all over Italy, all over Europe, and all over the place. But my father actually left 3 years before we came. So he came here, established himself. He was an engineer back then, but here he had to, work his way up through things, and you know the stories.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
But then and then there were no cell phones, so there was no Zoom back then, and it was like the odd letter, and things would be sent to us, and that kind of thing. And then 3 years later, we arrived. And that was something, being in in the back of the room with all the other people that you didn't understand anything. So if the guys didn't take a liking to you, whatever the teacher said, of course they wouldn't translate the way it should have been done. So you get in trouble, right?
Yeah, you soon form these little groups of little gangs, and it was incredible. And I can still remember my first friend, Giuseppe Gara, and he was my translator. And then there was another guy, Cesario. So there was a few guys. As I said, I was only it was in September 1966, I think it was. So you can imagine, it was a very similar story. And it's funny, in those days, there was, as I said, no special English class. They just place you in the classroom. And then the next year you find yourself in grade 3. I was in grade 2. And then I'm going, how did I get to grade 3? I can't even understand a word. The year after that, I'm in grade 4. And it's like, okay. But now, of course, it's changed. They've got special English classes, and there's so many wonderful opportunities. But you know what, Aldo? We got through. It made us the people that we are. And I'm grateful for that. And, I wouldn't change any of that early beginnings. It was great. And music, in fact, my dear friend, Giuseppe played guitar, so we formed a group.
Nice.
And it was all kind of, the music kind of started right from the early days.
Yes.
And we played in many bands together, so it was great. So that's kind of where it began, and we're here now. And obviously there's a hell of a lot that's gone on in Australia in the last 50 plus years, and it's incredible, really.
And then while you're there, you also, I mean, I know you started the drum shop, the magazine, the festival. I mean, I could go on and on.
Thank you. Yeah, it's incredible.
The creative. I mean, this creative juice, like, That's incredible. So you started the store first, right? Drumtek?
Well, okay. So when it got to on the education front, obviously, as I said, I started playing, professionally. Let's call it, because I was making money at 14, and then before you know it, I had 2 or 3 different bands going on. I was working in a reception band, and I was working in an original band, and so on and so on. So I kind of felt that, okay, how do I get into the industry at another level? And again, the school that I went to was called Melbourne Music Centre, right in the heart of Melbourne, on the 4th floor, and on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floor was a music store. In those days, there was multiple story music stores, and of course, I was 12, 13. I always used to hang in the shop, and eventually, the story is that I actually got a job in the shop. So I was still going to school, and I got a job. I was 16 or 17 years of age, and I thought, great, this will give me an opportunity to meet people and to get into the industry. And that really worked. That was because there was no other way to make connections. And then from there, I started obviously meeting people, joining other bands, and so on. So I had about a 3-year stint working while I was studying and everything else in the store. And that really gave me a really good understanding of that side of the world. But I also got an understanding of how the music school worked, and I loved education. So from an early age, I always wanted to write music for let's call it drum set grooves and drum theory books, etc. So I started writing I was probably about 15 when I wrote it was a very similar book, 15 or 16 I think I was, very similar concept to basic drumming from Joel Rothman. And it took me about 5 years. I was kind of coming up with these ideas. It was actually, I thought it was pretty good. And so, as I said, the writing side of it for me, those juices were there from the very, very beginning. The education, I loved education. I loved the drumming kind of world in that world. And there wasn't a lot in those days. There wasn't a lot of books. But anyway, this book, I shelved it in the end, because when I saw 5 years later, when I was starting to go, okay, I've completed, I had the cover design, everything done. It was about 150 pages. And I'm looking for a publisher. Of course, couldn't get a publisher. Then I went to the store downstairs and I saw this book that was released by Joel Rothman. I go, holy shit, this is amazing. And it was obviously even more comprehensive than what I had. And I thought, what's the point of having another book or even attempting to have? So I actually shelved my book completely all that time. But, I used the material for students and it was still great. So then I came up with another idea. I was working with an artist and I was traveling around Australia, and I was sponsored by those days. I got a sponsorship with Sonar Drums. And every time I was traveling on the road, they were going, would you like to do a clinic in Perth, or would you like to do a clinic in Sydney? So I started doing clinics in around 1980. And that led to writing. Like, I actually, again, it was part of the education. So I actually thought, okay, let me write some clinic notes. So when I go to do this presentation on days off, I would hand out music sheets. It was about 14 or 15 pages. And I thought, okay, because I don't want to go there and just talk and demonstrate and just, hey, hello, bang, this is solo, and then any questions, and then see you later. I thought, no, I want to actually make it more educational. So I started writing what I came up with in those days, because I started using the bass player in the group as well, a great bass player by the name of Steve Morgan. So Steve and I would go and we called them rhythm section workshops. So I actually wrote drum and bass parts. So there was 1-bar grooves, 2-bar grooves, short summaries, and we would conclude with a piece. And it was all written, and we would hand that out to the public. Sonar go, wow, Sonar were thrilled. And they I wish I had some of those copies here to show you. Sonar go, you know what, let's make a little booklet out of it. So they printed a 16-page book, and it was titled Rhythm Section Drumming. So that was the beginning, and it was so successful. People loved it. There's still today, 40-odd years later, people still come up to me and go, man, I've got that book of yours that you gave me at a clinic in Tasmania. It's incredible, Elder.
Is it still available?
Then I thought, there's a book idea right there, because in 1980, there was no drum and bass books.
Right.
And so I'm not sure if you've seen my book, Rhythm Section Drumming, but it's actually bass parts and drum parts.
Not in real. I mean, I've seen it online, but I don't. Is it still available?
It's still available. And in
Okay.
fact, in Australia, New Zealand, and parts around the world, it's still a huge selling book. We probably sell about, around, in Australia alone, about 15 to 2,000 books a year. And it's part of the education system now. So that was the beginning. Those clinics gave me the opportunity to come up with material. And then eventually, 5 years later, the book was released. And again, the book was another story because I couldn't get a publisher. And I went to quite a few publishers in Australia. I won't name them, but they go, "Oh, look, there's a few drum books out there." There was nothing like my book, especially in the 80s. I actually released it in September 1985.
Okay.
So we're coming up to almost 40 years ago. I was in my 20s and couldn't get a publisher. I thought, stuff this, I'll publish it myself. What does it take? Okay. So I had no idea. So then I started my own publishing company. So a lot of things were you were kind of almost forced to do that. But let me tell you, in hindsight, it was the best move I ever made because that book has sold hundreds. We probably sold about 200,000 books in the last 40 years.
Wow.
And it's been a huge success, and it still is. So that was the kind of beginning with the education. And as I said, Aldo, I'm going to actually send you my books. I'm actually going to send them to you. I'm going to send them to you via email, so you've got them. I've got digital versions of them, and you can check them out. But because I know that your book, again, we've actually got your book in the store.
Beautiful.
So you're, as I said, we share a lot of passion because you've obviously done the same thing. But in the later years,
let me stop you for a sec. Let me stop you for a second because this is important. What you just said, when you can't get a publisher, and you remember, I had finished the book after all the work I do in Cuba and have done over the past 20 years. I said, I have to write the book because there's a lot of not just misinformation, but things that are just not really understood the way they meant them, and they couldn't translate in classes or communicate what they really meant. So I said, I have to put this in paper. So I wrote the book with everybody in Cuba in mind. I worked with Changuito, with everyone. And then I said, we have to have play along tracks, and they're full tracks, like songs.
It's amazing.
With the charts.
I love it.
I went crazy, 3 years of it. And then I have to give you a lot of credit because when I was shopping it, you said, no, you should publish it yourself. And, there were a couple of people who I respected who had done, and you've done many books, who said, no, do it yourself. And then I thought, well, with all that we've done, why not? So I have to thank you.
It's my pleasure. And I remember when we had this discussion because my story is very no different to any other artists out there that have had, whether it be drummers, musicians, or vocalists, or just general songwriters. And you used to hear those horror stories that that some of the legends didn't own their catalog, and they signed their life away when they were 18, 19, 20 years of age. But nevertheless, I can understand why they did that because they wanted their music released and published.
Of course.
And because I recall at the time, Aldo, there was no Sibelius where I can do all the music content myself. I had to get quotes for people to actually print it and typeset and all the rest of it. And that was such an expensive process. I remember it was going to cost me about $4,000 just to get the music, 140 pages of rhythm section drumming typeset so they can print it. So then I thought, I can't afford that because I'm publishing, I'm paying, this is self-funded. So I actually stayed up for 3 months, literally night and day, and every single page is handwritten. Now, I used rulers. So when you first look at it, you go, oh, yeah, it's been printed. I actually used rulers, letter set. The only thing the printers did was put the page numbers and the actual title of the piece at the top. That was all the printers actually did. Every single other musical note for drums and bass, I actually copied. And I've got those original copies as well. So that was painstaking. It took me over 3 months to copy the book at that level.
Right.
So,
beautiful.
But I remember the first 3,000 books with everything, the printing and all the rest of it. It cost me about 12,000 Australian dollars, which in the 80s was a lot of money. Sure. I'll put it in perspective for you. I could buy a house mid-80s for 70,000 Australian dollars. My book cost me 13,000. Wow. So it was like literally it was a lot of money, but I came up with that, got a loan. Glad I did because, as I said, it definitely paid off. So, that's why when you asked me for some advice, I said, publish it. You need to own You need to own your book, your material. You got to own it. Then get a distributor, like you have the wonderful Alfreds.
And then
Then get a
Hudson
distributor,
does
and
the
they'll obviously you own the rights to that book.
yeah, and Hudson has the digital version distribution.
That's
of
right.
it.
Yes.
But at any time, I mean, and everybody's doing great with this. But at any time you own it, you can do whatever you want. Respectfully in the business.
Absolutely. And those companies, Hudson are amazing. They're brilliant.
Yeah.
I love Rob and what he's doing, and obviously in the early days with Paul. But Rob and I still collaborate in quite a few things in Australia, and his work is amazing. Isn't it funny how we've gone full circle? The digital, everyone online, and what's Hudson doing? Bringing out print media.
Isn't that funny? I was looking at this, and he's saying, and I have to call him on this because this is all recent. He's like printing again. I mean, some of these things are coming back around, but in a different light. Now it's a different.
That's right.
We're in a different world. And it kind of makes sense, but we have the digital, so now we can navigate. It's like the technology of teaching, right? We can teach from anywhere on the planet. I teach from my house in Calabria. All my students follow me around the world.
Absolutely.
And recently, I can now teach from Cuba, not even to Cuba, from Cuba. I can teach from there, and my students are looking at me and say, "Well, Aldo, where'd you get the tan since the last time?"
Well, this is the wonderful part about technology, and we all embraced it, and obviously we utilize it. But I just want to, as I said, I just had to mention that full circle because it's wonderful to see. Because I know that we're talking from probably old school, but a lot of the younger generation love the fact that they can actually get a book like yours, mine, all the stuff that all the material that Hudson is putting out now, and you got an actual tangible material that you can actually put on a music stand or read it, and it's just so good because we look at screens day in, day out, and I think it's a good move on their part. And you know what, Aldo? It's been successful. I mean, the recent books, as you know them all, have been hugely successful, not just in America but in Australia as well. It's been remarkable, and I applaud them for doing that. And as I said, we've had that wonderful experience here as well. So education is always going to be there. The acoustic drums, when electronic drums came out, everyone go, "Oh wow, what's going to happen to the acoustic drums?" So great, yeah. All the electric drums did was turn people more onto drums. It's actually made people more aware of drums because they can actually play in their apartment, and it's actually, I think, it's created a better outcome. So we've embraced all the electronics as well. So, it's just fantastic. So I guess I'm rambling on a little bit there, but I'm just, as I said, the education was a huge part of my beginning, and it still is. And then, I thought, okay, I think it was 15 years later, I came up with the other idea of coming up with, because Sona printed two books. One was on rhythm section drumming, and the other one was Rudiments and Motions. So Rudiments and Motions was also born in the mid-'80s.
And that's a great book.
Thank you. So Rudiments and Motions has been a huge success as well. I'll release that in 2020. Sorry, no, 2001. Sorry, I think it was. So that's over 20 years as well. And that's again, it's a heavy book because it's about 170, 180 pages. It's like the mini encyclopedia of rudimental drumming, and again, it's about motions behind the rudiments, and it's quite intense. So it's not. It's been selling really well, but it's a bit daunting when people see it. They go, "Oh, it's too much." So, and I could have brought out, should have brought, volume 1, 2, and 3, but I thought, no, like rhythm section drumming, one volume, thank you very much, that's done. Same with Rudiments and Motions. So basically, the education has been at the forefront of everything that I've done. Obviously, live playing as well, but then you talked about the shop. The school, the magazine. So the education and the music, being an author came first. Then I thought, okay, I'd love to have my own school. So the idea was to open up, and because I was teaching privately, had a wonderful studio, and I was literally 30 years of age, and it was like one-on-one. Whenever I stopped, everything stopped. So if no gigs, no teaching, I thought. And I realized very early in my life that people call it entrepreneur, whatever. But I'd realized I had a family, and I thought, I can't do this. Like if I get sick or whatever, I need something else. So I thought, let me open up a school, and I'll obviously the rest will take care of itself, and I'll have teachers teaching for me and whatever. And that was the idea behind Drumtek. So when Drumtek, the concept first came, it took me about 3 years to plan that and make that, realize that dream. So the idea there was Drumtek was going to be a school. It wasn't going to be a shop. But because I had some shop experience from my early beginnings, I thought a lot of people, even the designer, because I actually purchased the land and built it from ground up. So if you actually go to the Drumtek website and you click on history, you actually see some photos of when we actually constructing the building. So again, that was another huge hurdle, which I won't get into, but it was going to originally be just a school. Everyone was going, if you're going to have a school, you should have a shop because, you'll service the community. We need another, more drum shops. And in those days, there was very few drum shops. So anyway, I thought, okay, well, we'll have ground level will be a shop, upper level will be a school. And that's kind of what we did. And so from 1990, I purchased the land in 1990 and we opened in 92. The rest is history, as they say. It's been a huge success. Drumtek is internationally renowned now, and it's only one of two actual real, just only drum shops left in Australia, unfortunately. A lot of them have got musical instruments as well, and they've got a drum department. But, so Drumtek and the school, we've got 12 teachers on staff, and it's going really, really well. And we've got our own in-house little auditorium where we do our in-house clinics. Recently we've had, Dennis Chambers when he was in town. We had Jimmy Chamberlain, Chad Smith, a number of people. We just recently had the most recent clinic and we did a short tour with him was Nathan Grootman as well in November last year. And that was fabulous. He was here with suicidal and tendencies and, we ended up doing 5 dates with him after the tour. So that whole inspiration from the beginning is still going. But as I said, the Drumtek history is been a huge one. And then 3 years later, or actually the year after, I go, we haven't got a drum festival in Australia. So I started the first day. It was called the Ultimate Drummers Day, and we did that for 3 years. And then in 96, we made it a weekend and a drum expo in 1996, and we called it Australia's Ultimate Drummers Weekend. And it had a fully fledged drum expo where all the exhibitors would exhibit, and we had a theatre, and that's been wonderful. So of course, during COVID, we had to stop, but we celebrated 25 years in 2018, our last show.
Nice.
25 consecutive years, massive. And everyone, you name it, all the big guns have played there, and it was incredible. So that's kind of where the festival idea came from. And then in 1995, I thought, why hasn't Australia got a drum magazine? So I thought, okay, I'll publish my own magazine. So that was 29 years ago, Aldo, and drum scene is still going. So, yeah, I mean, you've seen the mags, and
yes,
I'll actually send you some digital ones of the most recent ones, but we're, in this April, 2024 will be our 29th anniversary for drum scene.
Beautiful.
So that's giving you kind of a bit of a brief history there in a 10-minute conversation. So hopefully that sort of gives our listeners, if they want to learn more, of course, they can always go to our website and they can reach out to me as well.
What's the website? Drumtek.com.au?
.au, that's exactly right. And drumscene.com.au. So
Drum Scene is the magazine, yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's been an incredible. But as you can see, there's a big picture there. It's education, the store, the magazine, and the festival. It's kind of covered pretty much, everything across the board. And thankfully, 2024, we're still here to talk about it and still going strong.
Yes, no kidding. And when we look back, like Yolan and I, we look back sometimes and we look at the numbers. We were in during COVID. We're celebrating the 25th anniversary of COSA, right? And of course,
absolutely,
we celebrated it at home by ourselves.
I
But
know.
you know what we did, because we were doing especially we were doing China, we were doing Cuba, the one in Vermont, and then we started one in Montreal at our school here. But the funny thing is that all the people who had been through all these years, and of course we also had a lot of great people there, including Damien, your son, who came on
Yeah,
faculty
I
one
remember
year.
that. He loved it.
Yes. And I mean, and we had everybody. And the funny thing is this, like that during COVID, I mean, I started this podcast because I was going crazy. I said, what can I do to just connect with people? And then here's the idea of shaping your journey. But then at the same time, I had the habit of always recording everything and filming everything for archive purposes. So from the beginning of Repercussion, the group has been around for over over 45 years now. And we're still
Wow.
playing, by the way. So we filmed and recorded everything all along. And COSA, all our workshops, the master classes, the concerts, because the COSA was in two parts. It would be the workshops, the classes all day long, all over the place. But in the evening, there were performances. It was an open festival all week to the local community. So we had all those tapes, at least 2,000 tapes in all the different formats. So
Awesome.
we digitized everything. And I said, eventually, this is going to go up there. And we finished now. Now, eventually, this is all going to go up there with all of that stuff. Some really funny stories.
Oh,
We
so
see
wonderful that you did
Jim
that,
Chapin
Alba.
arguing
Awesome.
with Bill Ludwig, things like that. Nice arguing, but a lot of stories.
You had a dream. You had a dream, and your dream still continues. And it was wonderful that you recorded everything. If you get a chance, you've seen this was going back a number of years now. We recorded our 10th anniversary of Australia's Ultimate Drummers Weekend, which was distributed through Hudson when DVDs were a thing that were successful. Now, of course, even though it's still a great resource, but they're not really, that very few exist. But if you get a chance, I know you've got the original. You should have the 10th anniversary of AUDW.
Yes.
Click on the history part, and there's actually, because I was like you, I recorded everything as well. So
Nice.
there's quite a few clips of the very, very first Drummers Day that we did.
Okay.
As part of the history on that, as extras on that DVD. So just check that out, because that was an amazing DVD. We had such a great festival, and it was 2 days, and it was magic. And but yeah, check out the history part, because it's got
Beautiful.
it's got a young David Garibaldi when he played at the festival, and we brought him out for the first time. He played in Australia, and we had Graham Morgan played with his big band on that show. So we've got clips from that. Virgil with his long hair, and he was like, late 20s or whatever, early mid-20s or whatever. So you see a young Virgil just kicking absolute butt, but a lot of great Australian players as well. So we had Dave Samuels as well.
Nice.
He was fabulous on vibes. And as I said, there's a few short clips of that on the history part. You've got to watch it. It'll give you a bit of an idea of what's been going on here for so long. And you know what? Because of that, it's inspired so many people.
Yep.
The locals here have been blessed to have those festivals, because as you know, you can go there, you can meet them, get an autograph, and watch them play, and you're close up. But there's nothing like that experience. And you're the master of putting on events with what you do, and it's like you can just feel that inspiration just bursting out, and that's what gives me the energy to keep doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
But watch that history part. There's actually another history. We extended it on the 2003 DVD as well, and the 2005, and there's about 5 or 6 different DVDs from the festival. And then as obviously sales sort of started drying up, I've still recorded the event. I've still got them all, but we didn't end up releasing them for the obvious reasons. So I'm like you. Hopefully one day we'll bring out a ton of material and for the world to see.
Oh, mine are all lined up. A question of time. It's just when is the right moment, the right format, the right way to do this. But they're coming out for sure. It's all done.
Good on you. That's awesome.
Even I mean, we had done once. When I spoke to the Hudson guys, at one point I said, let's do a two DVD, because we were all week. Imagine all these concerts, all of these classes and master classes with all of these people, everybody from Jimmy Cobb to Joe Morello to Neil Peart to you name it.
Absolutely.
And back then I said, let's do a DVD with master classes in it, a 15-minute class on a specific topic, and then when they perform, they would do one number that would reflect that class, right? So that was the whole idea. It was like originally it was like 26 lessons with the masters, but then we said, oh no, this is way too much material, it'll never come out by the time we edit everything. So we said, let's just do one, and it'll be 13 lessons with masters, Bernard Purdy and Ed Sof, Giovanni Hidalgo, and all of these guys, and that was released. I mean, we did it
Yeah,
with
I saw parts of that, and it's just wonderful, man. So great. I love it.
Yeah, and I said at one point there was Clayton Cameron with his brushes and Giovanni, and I said, guys, why don't you do at the concert, because we're filming this, why don't you do a duet, just snare drum and conga, brushes and conga, and it's in there. it's a class. I said, well, I don't know where that inspiration for me to say that, but they did it, and it was amazing.
I mean, two masters in their own right. So you can imagine, I can just imagine, I haven't actually seen that one, Aldo, but I've had the pleasure of having Clayton at our festival, and he's just, I've never seen anyone play brushes like that guy. Giovanni, of course, I've seen him internationally at NAMM shows and seen him perform, and never had him at our festival. But of course, you got two of the world's greats in their own right. So I can just imagine that would have been a magical moment.
Yeah, and with Giovanni, I mean, we've had him a number of times. I mean, he's crazy. I mean, a good crazy. He's so creative.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's just insane. And it's always inspiring to see these people up close. And that's why, like what you're doing and what we're doing as well is, you have to be in the room. You have to show up. And that is inspiration. We speak
Absolutely.
to guys who were students of ours. For example, Mark Juliana. He was a student at COSA for a couple of years, and that's where he met John Riley, who then, things just
kind of evolve
one thing to another, and then you get pulled into this, and you see how natural it is. And, of course, you have to be interested in this and do the work. And then the other thing is just show up,
Absolutely. Exactly. And the students of the day that did show up year after year are now the legends in the making today that we're talking about. I mean, Mark is an incredible player, and we have got similar stories in Australia. Every time I travel, people go, "Oh, I remember when I came to that festival. It was it was a turning point in my life," and all this sort of stuff. And I know that's actually what people like you and I that are actually creating the platform. And it's not easy to get all these people in the same venue over a week or 2 days. For us, it's they've got to travel all the way across the world, and it's even more difficult. So you can imagine. Sure. So, yes. But we've been able to do it. But I would hate to see what the scene would be like if we didn't actually have our own magazine, our own festival, a school, a shop like Drumtek. It's quite unique because there are great shops, there are great schools, and there's magazines and festivals, but very, very. I can't think of one other establishment anywhere in the world that's actually got so many different, diverse, all within the same people.
Yeah, with a great.
And for me, what the inspiration is the people. They show up. The first festival we did in 1993. I mean, it was. I just couldn't. When I think back, I go, gee, I tell you, I had guts to do that because I hired a 3-level tiered theatre that was a 2,500 seater, and I thought, and it cost a lot of money, and I had to bring in all our own production and everything, but we pulled it off, and we got about 1,500 people on the first show, which is extraordinary.
Wow.
And that was kind of obviously people shut up. So then we did it again and again and again. The rest, obviously, like as we said before, the rest is history. But thankfully, people did show up. And music now post-COVID and live music, it's really starting to hit in a big way. I mean, all these big bands are doing stadiums now. They're not just doing venues of 10, 12, 15,000. They're doing stadiums.
Right.
Like, it's insane. It's so wonderful to see. And we just right now, this week, we've got Pink in town. She's doing stadiums. We've got Taylor Swift. She's doing 3 or 4, 5 sold-out stadiums in Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah.
We're talking about stadiums, 50, 60, 70,000 people, Elder. So it's great to see. Last year we had Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they sold out stadiums all over Australia. So it's really just great. It's very inspiring to see that.
Yeah. And it's good for people coming up to see that's happening. It's not just technology on computers and your phone, like live, seeing people in 3D. And now I make it a point to show up places. I say, okay, now I want to see you in 3D.
It's incredible, absolutely. And it's just like, and Australia seems to be the flavour of the year. Like last year, we had so many concert tours, and they all did well. I won't mention them all, but there was literally hundreds.
Wow!
Just this week, my staff just went to see Blink 182. They did 3 shows in Melbourne. It's like, and it's wonderful to see that they're back. Like, it's pretty obvious that records sales are pretty well. They're getting a lot of streams, but I don't know how much that equates to money. And I think it's smart to go, you know what, let's get out on the road. So a lot of bands, I think that's been the inspiration to actually get out there and obviously do live shows. So, but yeah, it's let's just hope it keeps it going, and education as well, and the whole spectrum seems to be heading down the right direction at the moment.
Yeah, and the nice thing.
Through those 3 years of COVID, we all suffered so much.
Boy, oh, yes. And I think it's really nice. I mean, the whole idea, and I know you feel the same way, is I tell people, you come, you learn from all of these masters, but there's also something else going on. You're connecting with others, like-minded people who then will be your friends, your colleagues, people you help, people will help you. I mean, we're there to make all of these things happen for everybody, because if everybody is okay, then everybody is okay, And,
absolutely.
And connecting.
Absolutely.
And now more than ever, like reconnecting is people are going back on the road. Even Ringo Starr, Paul McCartney, Mick Jagger, they haven't stopped. And they were our inspiration, right?
Absolutely. And those artists you just mentioned, they don't really need, it's not that they're doing it for the money, because they're doing it because they love it. I mean, Paul McCartney was only here a few months ago, sold out stadiums again. Like, it was just insane. Yeah. People just were in awe. They just loved it. And, they're legends, absolute legends to the core. And, it's just, and people are supporting us. So I guess you're never too old. I mean, God bless him. McCartney's around 80 years of age now, and he did a 3-hour show, this stadium show, 3 hours on stage.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, I'm in awe of all of these guys. And I said recently to Greg Bisonet, who's a very good friend, I said, tell Ringo not to stop. When he comes to town, he always invites me to the concerts, and I see them. And I say, please tell Ringo never to stop, because if he stops, then we have to start thinking about it. So the fact that he's there means we're just kids. Beautiful.
Incredible. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, he was definitely one of the inspirations for me. I mean, I remember playing along to Beatles records, so that was our education in those days, wasn't it, Aldo? I used to, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Beatles,
That famous night with Ringo Starr and the Beatles, of course. I mean, we all have that same story. It was like a script. The next day, everybody was a musician. And then for the rest of your life, it hasn't stopped, right?
No,
so
it hasn't.
I played in all of these bands, and I went on to play with a really well-known band. But then I said I was starting to discover jazz, classical music, and all of these other things, and I really wanted to study. So then I was accepted at McGill in Montreal and moved to Montreal and then studied, and then met the guys in my group, toured the world with them, then started doing studio work, TV shows, and all of that, and it just hasn't stopped. I mean, the only reason it stops is because now I decided to do other things with what I had gathered and the people I knew. Then we started the whole COSA thing, which is...
it's been a wonderful success, and, you're connecting people all over the world. Yeah. So hats off to you, man. Keep it up.
Thank you. And that's why I wanted to speak to you, because it's really important that all of us connect and say, Frank is doing that. so and so's doing this, and whoever's doing whatever, it should remain. We should be supportive and connect, because when you know somebody's there to help somebody else, and what are you doing, and enlighten other people, because there are a million channels, and you can't be paying attention to absolutely everything. But those of us say, "Oh, look over there," and
Exactly.
call this person.
It's an inspiration.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and then
And the next generation is obviously they draw the inspiration from that, whether it's they see a live concert or that it's that live connection. Because as we know, there's a ton of material online, but there's just nothing quite like being in the room, at a festival or at a show or out of even just a private lesson. I mean, we all do online lessons and everything else. Our school, probably 20% of our classes are online. The rest are all in person, and there's just quite nothing like that experience,
Exactly.
and so, but look, it's a wonderful direction that's still heading down that direction, and it's great that we're able to give that next generation the opportunity to be inspired, and they'll go on to inspire as well. So that's really ultimate. We're fulfilling our dream, but at the same time, we're creating dreams for others as
Sure.
well.
And that's important. I just had a flash of Virgil Donati. I remember when he first moved to North America, I got a call from him, and he said, "I want to do." We were doing. I believe it was his idea of doing something for the Guinness Book of Records. How many drummers you can have in a stadium? So he went to the music shops here, and they said, "Oh, then you should call Aldo if you want to do this." So I get a call from him, and I said, I love the idea. So what we did was we started advertising it. So we got a stadium here, one of the big stadiums, and I think we got like 500 or 600 drummers to play. I'm
Oh my
talking
God.
about years ago. This is many years ago.
I remember Virgil talking about that.
And so it was me, Virgil, and I said, let's add another element, a dancer. With the group, we happened to be working with a West African dancer in African drumming. I said, let's add that as well to this mix. And it was and he's crazy, but a good crazy. And then
Man.
we did it, and all these people showed up. Beautiful.
Oh, it's just so wonderful, man. It's just so good. I mean, only drummers could do that. It was like that tribal kind of, gathering that's been going on for centuries, and it's still within us. And it's just great. Virgil, obviously instigated that. You obviously realised the dream and made it happen. It's so great to see. And look, you mentioned Virgil. We go back. He lived 5 minutes away from my house.
Okay.
In Melbourne, so we grew up pretty much together, and he was just such an inspiration. I remember going to his place, and he used to show me stuff. He was into Billy Cobham in those early days, and I remember he was the first one to actually show me a 9/8 beat, a Billy Cobham groove, which I still play today. And he goes, "I transcribed this," and he wrote it down. It was just incredible. So we've got a big connection. We've been friends for many, many years, and he's been a huge inspiration in Australia. And of course, he left over 25 years ago, but he's still he's actually coming back in about 3 weeks, doing five shows at a place called Bird's Basement in downtown Melbourne, and that's going to be incredible. So we're catching up. We're doing a clinic with him as well. Beautiful. He played at the first festival. He played, we've done tons of stuff. Even I've toured his bands when they came out to Australia. Yes. So we've had a massive, massive connection, and dear friend.
And he's been nonstop. We even worked together in China when we, in our whole work with the 9 Beats organization in China, we were doing for years. But, these kinds of things, like staying on it, some people say, oh, I don't think the music is going anywhere these days, and it's not true. I mean, there's not true. So much going on. And all the creative.
You got to be creative, and I guess the thing that I always say to students, and even when we do our end of year concerts with all our students, I always say to them, if you want to live your dream, you also got to be diverse, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Just this basic stuff that you hear, but you from a lot of people, your parents, and sometimes they don't listen to their parents, but always be diverse, and try and be obviously caring along the way, treat people how you want it to be treated.
Exactly.
Be as creative as possible, but at the same time, don't put all your energy into one thing. And if you can attribute my success or your success to one thing, is that we were diverse. As I said, that turning point when I couldn't get it published, I didn't just close the book and go, forget it. I worked hard. I worked in bands. I did everything that I could possibly do to save the money to do it. So that inspiration carried through to the next project and the next project, and never say no that I can't do it. And never make it a financial decision, like where you go, I can't afford this, forget it. There's always other ways. Work harder. So that work ethic is really, really what will, give you make your dreams realize, to actually flourish. And if you stay on course, it might take a year, 2, 10, 5, however many years it takes. But if you really believe in it, stay on course and it will happen.
Sure. Absolutely. And we have the creative, being drummers and percussionists, our brain kind of works differently. And I know for myself, I would be inventing things, and just because you're problem solving all the time. And then that's another thing that I did during COVID. All those inventions that I created, now I'm getting them. I patented them, and I'm having them out. The first one just came out. It's a music stand for mallet instruments that I licensed to Manhasset Music, the music stands, and it's a game changer. It just sits on the frame of the instrument. It's a regular music stand, and I have more coming.
Fantastic. Basic idea, but it works. It's incredible. And if you weren't the person and the musician that you are, you wouldn't be in a position to actually think of some of those creative things. And you go, I remember when, again, talking about that, like when I published my first book, it cost me a lot more money to do spiral bound. Because I remember most of the books as a teacher, again, I was teaching, when you get a book that's burst bind, you have to, when you open it to a page, you have to squeeze the guts of it to kind of make it stay flat on the music stand. So when I was in that position to go, okay, I'm going to actually have my own book, I don't want to have that problem that I've had, because I hated it. And the books eventually used to fall apart because the glue would all come unstuck. So Rhythm Section Drumming was one of the first books, I think, ever. It wasn't stapled. It was actually spiral bound, and it still is. So just a little thing like that, if I didn't have the experience as a teacher, you wouldn't know what the problems.
Exactly.
You knew the problems that you faced along the way. So and along the way you had many of those problems. You go, okay, so your problem, troubleshoot here. Let's try and solve this, and eventually you come up with the best ideas. And so these inventions of yours, if obviously they're successful because you've obviously lived through it.
Yeah, and you solved all kinds of different issues for yourself, and then when you take the time, it also helps others who are in the same situation, who didn't think there was a problem. Now they solve the problem they didn't think they had, but it makes life so much easier.
So much easier. Fantastic.
And
also, keep it up.
Thank you. But it goes like what you did. Being professional, showing up, being totally there and dedicated to what you do. And it doesn't have to be the one thing. Do it right. Always treat the thing and people professionally. This is a profession. I tell people, this is a profession. It's not a hobby. It's just like medicine or law. It's a profession.
That's right.
And you treat it that way, and everything that comes with it. It doesn't mean that a doctor only does medicine. One of my good friends, our family doctor for years, was a guy who invented games from Hong Kong, and then he got into technology, and then he also did that, and then all of a sudden, our family doctor only worked on weekends because he loved medicine, but he couldn't stop. So he was an inventor on one end. The other was he started a company, a tech company, years ago, and then he moved to the islands somewhere for a while because it was too much, and he could do the technology. And then he came back to medicine. I'm not sure where he is now, but if you have that kind of mind, do it. Do
Do it.
whatever you like, and nobody can stop you. And you shouldn't. If something you enjoy doing and you become good at it, hey, we need people like that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I totally agree, Aldo, and just that diversity and just you get an idea, don't shelve it, just pursue it, and don't be in a hurry. That's the thing. You just got to just keep pursuing it. And as I said, like a lot of everything that I've ever achieved, it wasn't just an idea and just bang, it became a reality.
No.
It took years of work, years and years, and investments as well. And that didn't all go great either. Some of them failed, but you learn from that as well. So, that's kind of, I'm still here doing what we do, and you're still doing, what you do best as well. And I truly believe that. So hopefully we'll keep it going, Aldo.
Absolutely. And then the more failures you have, the better, because you have the more to learn from.
Absolutely.
If you don't fail, you can't succeed. Unless you're lucky or somebody just puts it on the table, and it's like winning the lottery. Now what? It's not yours.
It's not. And if you've never worked for it, you blow it, you'll never be able to earn it back again. And I think that's the difference. You can take care of business as well on the way. Not a lot of musicians are business minded, and you don't have to be, but if you can learn a little bit about the back end, how it all works, it's going to put you in a really great position as well. Again, like I'm grateful that I actually publish all my own books, and then eventually that led to publishing Drum Scene and all the rest of it. And I just didn't take no for an answer. But it took years. And that's the key. But having that business mind as well, that you got to go, hey, okay, so I was first a player and educator and player throughout all my life, still am, but you got to get it. You got to get the reins and go, okay, I'm going to control this to the best of my ability. So you got control of your own destiny to a certain degree, as long as our health keeps going. But there's too many people that rely on too many other people to do their work.
Yeah.
And in our industry, you just got to be diverse, and you know that better than anyone. If you just sit and wait for it to happen, it'll never happen.
Sure.
So.
And then, of course, in a case like yours, you're in Australia, which is far from what we consider mainstream in North America. But it's not true. You're doing everything you wanted to do, and even better from
Thank you.
Australia. Like, that's far.
Yeah, definitely the other side of the world, and we're definitely down under.
That was the longest trip that I've ever taken, because I came for a 10-day session once with Gary France, you remember?
Yes, of course. Gary, dear friend of mine.
In Canberra. He invited me to do a 10-day residence there, and wow, is that far. But I loved it. It actually reminded me of a Canadian California.
Yes, I know. It's amazing.
It's fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
I love the place. I said, oh, interesting. Yeah. And of course I had, I have some other friends who are there who visit, but it's so far. But you still manage to do all of these great things, and you're continuing, right?
Thank you. Yeah. Look, it's not easy. It's still challenging, but I think if you're passionate about what you do, that's half the success right there. You don't wake up in the morning and go, how much money am I going to make today? That never enters the equation at all. It's just all about, what you do, and you live you're basically, the passion is your life. And, and obviously having the support of your family as well. Like my beautiful wife, Rosanna, and my boys, another huge inspiration as well with everything I do. And not only just inspiration, helping with the back end as well. My wife for many, many years ran our office and still does. She still does a lot of work in the back end. And it's important. You've got to have a team around you.
Yep.
Without that, it's a very, very bumpy road, because you might have that idea or that business concept or whatever, but you need other great people around you to help you, realize the dream. And, having a together office like yourself with your wife as well, and your family, it's so important to give you the energy and the inspiration to keep going on that front as well. So that you've got to have a good balance. The balance is so important.
Absolutely. And it's funny because in a case, I mean, you start off with the right intention, with the good intention and integrity, and then you keep going, and then it'll always attract the right people because the intention is right. And that's
Exactly.
important. And it's funny because when we started COSA, it was, I mean, I had been touring all over the world. I'd done, everything else, but I had this vision for a long time. And when I first met my Yola and my wife, then I said to her and my very good friend in Vermont, who I used to visit a lot, who later became our marketing person, I said, I have this vision in this college, and I described the whole thing. And this is only a few months after I met Yolan. And then Peter took me to this college that I had described. He says, "You've been here before." I said, "No. It's in a vision, and I've seen it, and I want it to be surrounded by mountains, this little college with a little lake." And he thought I was joking that I hadn't seen it, but I described the whole thing. So then we started it right away. And Yolan I said I couldn't have done it if Yolan hadn't showed up.
Yes.
I could not have done it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, there's a hell of a lot of other ingredients to kind of make everything become a reality.
Sure.
That back end. And people will never know that unless they've been in that position, whether it's been business or whether putting on a function or even putting on an event or a tour. Until you got that experience, you got definitely no idea what it takes to really get from A to Z, because that's really what it is. It's not just A to B. When you're putting on any event, it's like A to Z. It's especially in our world with drums and percussion. It's like, man, it's like everyone. I've got to have this sort of cowbell, as you know. I've got to have my cowbell. My head specs of this. My hardware's there. I've got to have this certain double pedal. That's those cymbals. So you got 20 drummers playing 20 different drum kits and 20 different specs. It's like, but everyone gets what they want, and I don't think I've ever had an artist that's walked away going not happy, Jan. Like it's
nice.
It's like that. I got there, everything sucked. I didn't get a sound check. Everyone gets a sound check. Everyone got their gear. All their riders, to right down to almost the felts that they use, and so yeah, that's a challenge. So that's from people they've never put on an event. It's like, watch out, because it's a huge mountain to climb, and but like as we said, it's just take one step at a time, and if you got the vision and you pursue it, and just you got the right people, you hire the right people, and then you can be the builder or the artistic director, or and you can obviously drive it, but you need a lot of wonderful people around you to get to the end result.
Yeah, and it's always a
so
team
your school, Aldo, how's that all going? So this vision that you had, obviously, then Yola showed up, and everything happened from there.
Well, it just continues, and it's an evolving thing. And then, of course, you have, when we had the whole COVID shutdown for us, it was a few years of shutdown. We went online. Some of the events that we were doing, also because we are on 2 floors here, and this is our main room where we have our recitals. We would have our main workshops when we have them in the city. All of a sudden, it turned out to be my playroom, for a while. And then what we did, I said, I really miss doing these workshops, and we would have like 25 artists on site for a whole week. So then I said in the first year, 21, I think, when everything was completely shut down, I says, well, let's do COSA online. So we did a whole week of 13 artists. We had Dave Garibaldi, Mike Clark, a whole bunch of them online all week. And we even had a performance online at the end. I said, we got to have this.
I remember seeing that. I tuned into a few of those. It was awesome.
I said, we're all at home going crazy. Let's do this. And then I said, Cuba, all the artists in Cuba must be going out of their minds, because in Cuba, without music, that's like a beach without the water, So
incredible.
So I said, let's do a weekend, a 2-day intensive live from Havana that we host from here. And of course, I never left town. But we arranged all the artists in Havana all day, 2 days, intense. From Horacio, Piloto, Changuito, like all the top guys were there. And that was, I think, one of the biggest challenges because we had to figure out all the internet. We had to figure out, and
Yes.
everything had changed. So we had to figure all of this out, and everybody's looking at me. I said, "We'll have all our tech people here in the back end. Yolan was in another computer, and everybody's upstairs in different studios making this, pulling that. We recorded everything, and it's going to be released." But it was funny because we had to figure things out. Like Changuito, all of a sudden, Oliver Valdez says to me, who's one of the great studio drummers in Havana, he says, "Okay, but Changuito, he doesn't drive and he doesn't have a car and he's going to need a tech to bring his gear. And where are we going to do this?" So,
See, they're
you
the
had to do
challenges.
all of these other from here, right? It's not like you're next door. So we had to figure all of this out, and it was 3 month, 3 month learning curve for everybody how to put this together. It was the same as when we did the Costa Online. I mean, Chester Thompson had not done any Zoom yet, so I'm going online with each one of them and making sure they knew how it worked or the new technology, what to do. So this worked. Mike Clark now is cooped up in his apartment in New York. He's not going out. And then the sound. Okay, now let's try this. Okay, I'll get back to you next week. I have an idea. Wow.
Oh man!
But
Tell you what, I guess they're the positives that came out of COVID because it made you, pursue that other angle that you possibly would have never done. So
No,
it
I
really
would've
made you
never
think
done it.
outside the box. You had to think outside the box to survive. So yeah, we did the same in
Yeah.
our school. It's just it was a tough time, but we got through it and made us better in many ways. And we just kind of leave it behind us, and let's hope we never have to revisit that again. But if nothing else, we're talking on Zoom now. It's really brought that to the forefront. A lot of online lessons are happening way more now. Especially for the remote cities where young students haven't got the facilities like COSA, like Drumtek, and whatever. Australia's a huge continent, as we know. It's the size of America. We've only got 26 million people.
Wow.
So, there are drummers from every corner of the country here that don't have a drum teacher anywhere it could be 1,000 miles away.
Sure.
So, we got some students from Darwin, which is a 6-hour flight from Melbourne. There's no way that they could ever afford to jump on a plane and come. And so that's kind of the beaut thing about the online. It's actually been good, but still, those students always say, "Oh, I can't wait to get down there to one of the festivals or to have in-person lesson or check out the vibe in the store and all that sort of stuff." So people sort of, at least we got the opportunity now. And again, I think it really pushed it to another level through COVID. We made us think outside the square, as we said, and and we're doing some great things now. Like all these recordings that you've got now that you've done, they're in the can. Possibly would have never happened. And unfortunately, a lot of those artists are getting older and, they're not always going to be with us. And it's great that you've documented that. It's another part of history as well that we can pass on. Sure. Your work that you're doing will carry on forever.
And it's important because everything is a dripping down effect, because what we do now obviously comes from somewhere, and these lineages are important. Where did they come? Why? And the developments and the technology and the techniques and the ideas, the concepts just keep evolving, and the world is. I mean, we play, we speak this not only this music but this language of rhythm, which is truly universal, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So now the world is getting like much smaller. It's like it's this big, right? And
thanks to technology.
It's amazing. And what you're doing with the whole outskirts in Australia, I hadn't thought of it that way, but it makes so much sense. It's beautiful. Well, congrats, man.
Thank you. It's a wild country. That's absolutely, especially, admittedly, the centre of Australia, a lot of that is a desert, but, the coastal, the whole of Australia, it's all amazing small cities, large cities, and it's just mainly more the East Coast. It's really huge, in comparison to the West Coast. But in every coast right around Australia, there's people that play music, and but in remote places, like truly remote, there's places in Australia that I haven't even been to.
Sure.
And we get emails and we get all sorts of requests, for education or for material or for gear or whatever.
Beautiful.
So it's quite huge. And as I said, when you put in perspective how huge the country is, but population in comparison to North America, it's like 10%, not even.
Wow. That's amazing, and congrats on that. That's a great mission, and I commend you for all this great work, and now you've become like the glue, the center, and you're continuing the not only the lessons but also the festival. Are you doing that?
We've stopped, obviously, for in fact when we did our 25th anniversary in 2018, I made an announcement that it was going to be a biannual show. And then, lo and behold, 2020, which I had it all organised, venues booked, everything, we had to blow it out because of the shutdowns. And in fact, we were still doing. I had Steve Smith and Vital Information in Australia. We did a 5-day tour, and we also, while he was in Melbourne, we did a clinic with Steve in our auditorium, and literally the week before the tour hit, things were starting to unfold about the shutdowns, and it was just freaking me right out. Anyway, we managed to get through. The clinic was on the 16th of March 2020. By the 18th of March 2020, the country shut down. Steve literally he left on the 17th. He literally just made it home, and then the rest is just, it was an absolute disaster in terms of that front. Yes. So then the festival, of course, that year, which was scheduled for August, didn't happen. And then, the rest of it is still, it's still up in the air. So the short answer, no, not yet. I'm still not feeling comfortable about any of that.
Take your time. You want to do it right.
Yeah, it's just, but what we have been doing is last year, 2023, we started doing clinics and events again. We had Chad Smith, like I said, we did about a dozen different workshops and clinics. Maybe even more than that. It was just a great year. So, again, but hitting it slow and small. We only did one tour with Grayson. He finished his tour with Suicidal, and then we kicked off a 5-day tour, which was great. Have you seen him live or have had him at your events or anything?
No.
Yeah, he's a young monster, as you know. You've seen him online. He's incredible. Yes. Well, he delivered that live. It was fantastic. People loved it. And I didn't know how people were going to, obviously react, because he's something new on the scene, as we know. But yeah, he's definitely building his fan base. He's really big on social. So the attendances were really good. Nice, and he did a great job too, Yeah. So we're doing more of that, and I'm going to continue that this year. So big events, not on the radar at this stage.
Yeah. And I think it's important to readjust. I mean, in in the shutdown, it was going to be our biggest year, by the way. It was our 25th anniversary wedding and 25th anniversary COSA, because we started COSA when I first met my wife, Yolande. But we spent 3 months of refunding everybody for all that we did around the planet. So it was festival refunds that we were doing.
Oh, but horrible, isn't it?
Oh, it's an experience. It's truly an experience. But anyway, then you start rebuilding sometimes in different ways. And it's always not really necessary, and I'm sure you would agree, to do things the same way. Things have changed. We have changed. Certain appetites have changed, like and developments, evolution of things. So then that gave us a chance for pause and rethink. And then other things that develop now are more meaningful, because that's where we are.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It's so great. And we came out of it, and we learned a lot, and it was good to also slow down and just reflect. Yes. And we had no choice, but it was actually a good thing. I started a veggie patch first time
really?
in my back garden.
Nice.
That was my part of my sanity, getting through it, because I couldn't travel for about 6 months. And we I enjoyed parts of that. It was that lockdown. Obviously, it was frustrating on one front, but on many other fronts, it was actually rewarding, and it was actually I enjoyed it. It was like a forced break, and having the family at home, nice food. We were happy. We're in a nice space here, and we did things that you normally probably wouldn't slow down enough to actually do. So I'm sure it's a similar story all over the world.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I wasn't living in an apartment because that would have driven me completely nuts.
Yes.
And I felt for those people, especially in Europe when they're, singing along on the balcony with the other people in the other balcony and they couldn't go out of their space and they're in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment locked down. Totally, because those people live outside their apartment. They sleep in their apartment, but they're out in the piazzas and having their lunches and coffees and, that's what they live for in Europe, as we know. I love that scene. I love it. But I couldn't think of anything worse when you're used to that and then you're locked down. So thankfully we don't have to look at that. Even though COVID is still with us, we've got more cases out there now than during COVID. No one talks about it anymore, thankfully, but it's still there.
Oh yeah, no, it's still there. So we're not out of the woods, but at least now we know how to deal with things. We navigate, and we're
exactly.
in a much better place. But it was funny because when that was happening, it was funny because that same year I said to Yola, and I was looking at my calendar, and I said, I don't see 2 weeks or even a week off this whole year. Let's take a break before everything starts, so we'll be in a good place and we'll have good energy. So the family we went on a vacation, 1 week vacation, just to be back and be solidly rested and ready for this big year. So the day after we arrived, the shutdown. So we got a rest. And then we got a bigger rest without the sun, the second. Anyway, but this is great that we're having this conversation, and people that would think whatever they're doing, music, writing, anything that comes to mind that you want to do, you got to do it. You just do it. Don't wait. You do it, and then whatever happens, next, then how to resolve. You don't live a problem. You wait to find a way to make it work, right? We did it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I want to thank you for taking the time to we could talk all day long and for another week, but we might have to do this.
We'll have to do that when we finally get together, when you come and visit us in Australia, and go to some of these remote little towns, and you would love it. Lots of great fishing, lots of great views, and it's all natural. There's nothing, it's insane. So we'll continue this conversation then, hopefully.
Yeah, or when you come to Calabria.
Right. Okay.
Just throwing it at you. I love Australia, but Calabria has become more of an obsession with me now. But let's not talk about that or the food. But I want to thank you so much, Frank, for taking the time to do this. And as I always say, to be continued.
It's been my pleasure, Aldo.